Hail, fellow travelers. Tim from Secret Fire Books here with yet another book haul. These are books that I've picked up over the past week, the first week and a few days of the month of November. Most of these books I got from Sheepy Book Company, the little used bookstore that just opened up in my area. It is this really tiny family-owned business on Main Street in Reisterstown. It's not even a mile down the road from where me and my family work. So I visit there quite often. The owners are lovely, friendly people. So I want to support their business as much as possible. And recently they got a ton of vintage science fiction and fantasy paperbacks. And over the past week or so, they've been slowly but surely pricing them and putting them out on the shelves for their customers. And I was able to pick up quite a few of them. Some of these are pretty rare paperbacks that I got for pretty decent prices. The first one is an Ace science fiction special. This is The Traveler in Black by John Brunner. I've only read one John Brunner so far. That was The Atlantic Abomination. I read that for the Elusive Exclusive Book Society. I think that was back in January of this year, I'm pretty sure. And that was a fun little science fiction novel. It was kind of like about a monster, a Cthulhu-esque eldritch horror that is awakened by these scientists and it tries to take over the world, and so the military has to fight it off. It was fun. It was very pulpy, very goofy, but it was a lot of fun. From what I've heard, John Brunner tended to write a mix of pulpy science fiction and more introspective, philosophical kind of stuff. He's really more well known for his novel Stand on Zanzibar, which is like it's a big old novel. It's an absolute doorstopper, and I've had no interest in ever reading that, but I think I can manage his thinner little science fiction books. This is actually a collection of short stories all about this main character, the Traveler in Black, and I love that cover art. Who is this done by? It was done by cover art by Leo and Diane Dillon. Yeah, they did an awesome job on this very psychedelic looking cover. That very ominous looking main character on the front. I thought that was awesome. I'm getting ready to do my top 10 book covers video, and I would be lying if I said this one barely missed out being in the honorable mentions, because I really like that cover a lot. It is just super moody, and I love it. So cool. Speaking of good covers, this was purely a cover by. Well, also, I want to read more books by this author, but I saw her name and the cover itself and scooped it up. This is Orsinian Tales by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a Bantam paperback. And yeah, like I said, all I needed to see was Miss Le Guin's name and this cool wraparound cover of a castle. And I thought, I like castles. And I haven't read much by Ursula K. Le Guin. Again, I've only read one book. I read A Wizard of Earthsea last year, and I loved that book. I loved it a lot. So I need to break out into more of her stuff. I have no idea what these are about. This is another collection of short stories. I don't know what they're about, but I'm assuming they'll be good since it is Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a Paul Anderson novel. This is Philandry of Terra. Again, it was kind of a cover by. I'm kind of trying to slow down on my intake of Paul Anderson because I have a ton of his books and I haven't read that many of them. But it's a Michael Whelan cover, and it also has this little blurb right there that says, "The greatest adventure series in the history of science fiction." So clearly I had to pick it up. I'd be a fool not to. Yeah, I know nothing about this. I'm hoping it's some good old-fashioned swashbuckling space opera stuff. I like when Paul Anderson writes more pulpy, adventurous stuff as opposed to his more insightful stories where he tries to get all smart and, I don't know. I like his adventure stuff a lot more. I also bought 3 Star Trek paperbacks from Sheepy. I figure I can always add some more Star Trek books to my collection. They're very collectible. The first one is Star Trek The New Voyages. This is an anthology of short stories. The cover is very scratched up, as you can see, but I really like that artwork a lot. That's a really cool version of the Enterprise down there. So as I understand it, this series of paperbacks, Star Trek: The New Voyages, was meant to be kind of a spiritual successor to Star Trek: The Original Series. I know that when that show was canceled, the writers still had some ideas for scripts that they never got around to producing. So whether or not the stories in this anthology are based on those unused TV scripts, I don't know. But what I do know is that each short story in this anthology is introduced by a different cast member from the original series. So that's pretty cool. You got Leonard Nimoy, George Takei, William Shatner, Nichelle Nichols, James Doohan, all doing introductions for the short stories in this anthology. I think that's really cool. And I also picked up Star Trek: The New Voyages 2, which also has some cool cover art. It's a really interesting looking kind of derelict spacecraft that the Enterprise is zipping around there. That's interesting. So yeah, I'm assuming that's more of the same. And then I picked up a Star Trek novel. This is Star Trek: The Vulcan Academy Murders by Gene Loren. And I really, really hope that this novel is about Mr. Spock solving a murder mystery. That would make me so happy if that is the case. But, Spock, how could you have possibly known that the killer was a 9-year-old girl? Occam's razor, Captain. The most obvious answer is also the most logical. I simply considered the most possible age range for the killer. Given the circumstances, it seemed elementary. As you can see, it also has a great bit of Boris Vallejo cover art, with Spock facing down this freaky-looking dragon chimera alien thing. Yeah, I don't know what that's about, but it looks awesome. Now, I think I showed off all these books in a live stream that I was a part of recently. Jake from Pulp Mortem live streamed his most recent book haul a few days ago, and he invited me, Nick from the Book Graveyard, Andrea from Infinite Text, and Brian from Bad Taste Books to hang out with him and kind of join in on the fun of just looking at the goofy covers of those weird science fiction books that he picks up. And he gave us a chance to show off some stuff of ours as well. So I believe I showed off these next 5 books. But I'll talk about them a little more in this video. This one isn't necessarily a vintage paperback. It's a newer printing of an older novel. I think this is from the 1920s. This is The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany. I believe that's how that's pronounced. I've heard some people call him Lord Dunsany, but I've heard more people call him Lord Dunsany. So I think that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. I have been recommended this book a few different times. People say that this is some really good classic fantasy fiction, some stuff that actually had a bit of an influence on J.R.R. Tolkien when he was writing The Lord of the Rings. And it has a quote from H.P. Lovecraft on the front cover. No amount of mere description can convey more than a fraction of Lord Dunsany's pervasive charm. So yeah, that's what Lovecraft thought of this book. If Lovecraft liked it, it must have been good. That said, it might have also been very racist, now that I think about it. But speaking of Lovecraft, I also picked up this gem. This is the Ballantine adult fantasy version of The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath by H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, these are becoming harder and harder to find, these Ballantine adult fantasy paperbacks. They were published in the 60s and 70s, I believe, and now they're becoming rarer and rarer. If you look for them online, they're going for pretty ridiculous prices, but I was able to pick this copy up from Sheepy for only $8. I believe I only paid $8 for this. I know I got a good deal on it regardless. I've never read Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. I know the main character is Randolph Carter, the same character from The Statement of Randolph Carter, which is a really great Lovecraft short story. A very creepy one with a lot of atmosphere, by the way. And then I picked up these 3. This is a trilogy of novels, the Gormenghast trilogy by Mervyn Peake. This is a trilogy that I've been looking for a while. I've always wanted to track down some older, vintagey copies of these books. I could just easily go to Barnes & Noble or another big bookstore and buy that big paperback omnibus with all 3 books for like $40, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted the vintage copies. And luckily, Sheepy had all 3 at the time. So they gave me a pretty good price on them as well. The first one is Titus Grown. Now, all 3 of these books have some awesome wraparound artwork by Bob Pepper, is the name of the artist. And if you line them all up, it actually makes one big picture, which is pretty cool. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that off on video. I think I might have to put up a picture lining them all up and showing them off. This is the second one, Gormenghast, from which the series gets its name. I love this one in particular because of this creepy-looking ferryman-looking guy down there. What is he up to? The cover for this one is actually falling apart. I might have to tape that up or put some paper glue on that at some point. And then the third one is Titus Alone, which also, now that I think about it, this one might actually be my favorite. I like all the figure work going on in there. So yeah, if I can manage to put together all 3 of the covers on screen, I will right now. It makes one really cool, surrealist-looking image. This trilogy sounds really interesting. From what I've heard, it is a fantasy series. Not that there are any kind of supernatural elements in the story, but more so, it takes place in this impossibly huge castle that is occupied by this very strange kind of gothic Addams Family-esque family. And they lead this kind of decadent life that's absorbed purely by routine and doing these monotonous things over and over again every day, and nothing can get away in the way of their routine. But apparently, at the beginning of the first book, something does get in the way and disrupt their routine, and that is the birth of the main character, Titus Grown, who is the heir to the Grown family who lives in this castle. So I don't know anything else about the series. I just know that it's something that's talked about quite a bit when it comes to old school classic fantasy. These books they're pretty darn thick. There's some tomes. I don't know when I'll get around to reading them, but like I said, I've wanted to have them in the collection because they sound awesome, and if nothing else, the cover art is just fabulous. Okay, so that's all the books that I picked up from Sheepy Book Company, and a little bit of unpaid promotion here. I want them to get as much business as possible. If on the off chance you guys happen to live in the Reisterstown, Maryland area, or if you just are passing through, pay Sheepy Book Company a visit. Drop in, buy some books, support their business. They're great people. They have a great little store. I love them. In any case, the rest of these books are odds and ends that I picked up from other stores over the past week or so. I picked up this copy of The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. This is, it says a novel on the front cover, but it's a novella. It's very short, and the text is absolutely massive on the inside. But this is the book that the movie Hellraiser was based on. And in fact, I think Clive Barker himself wrote the screenplay for that movie. I've only seen that movie once, so I don't remember much about it. But if it's anything like the 2 Clive Barker short stories that I read last month, it's probably really messed up, really disturbing, but also a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that at some point. I'm also looking forward to Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. I need to read more Ray Bradbury. This is another writer that I've only read a couple of his short stories so far. I need to get into his novels, and a lot of people have said that this is his best novel. Recently, Steve and Paul from Check Your Shelf did a video on this, and Steve read an excerpt from the book, and it sounded incredible. And then after that, he said, if you like that excerpt, you need to read this book, because the book is just more of that. And that sounded awesome, so I picked up a copy of this as soon as I could. Yeah, I'll have to get to that sometime sooner than later. These next 2 are pickups from my family's shop. This one was donated to us by a consignor, but it was in really rough shape, so we couldn't sell it, so I decided to take it home instead. This is Hatchet by Gary Paulson. I had never heard of this book until Kevin Toll Reads did a review on it, and then I've been seeing it everywhere. Apparently, it is kind of a classic of young adult fiction. It's kind of a young adult survival novel. It's about this teenage boy who's involved in a helicopter crash, and he survives the crash, but then he has to live in the wilderness all alone, and the only thing that he has on him is this hatchet. So it's a survival story. And as you can see, the cover is very beat up. Some of the pages are falling out. I was able to put them back in place. I'm pretty sure the whole book is here. And yeah, Kevin sang this book's praises quite a bit in that review, so I'll have to check this out sometime soon. It looks like a very breezy short read. This next one is a book that I actually purchased from my family store. I didn't just take it home. I purchased this one because it's actually been in our book section ever since we bought it back in June. And ever since we bought the store, I'd been eyeing this book and thinking, man, I really hope that one doesn't sell because I want it. And at the beginning of October, I decided if that thing doesn't sell by the end of the month, I'm going to be the one to buy it. This is Don't Bump the Glump and Other Fantasies by Shel Silverstein. Shel Silverstein is one of my favorite childhood authors. I read his books, A Light in the Attic and Where the Sidewalk Ends, cover to cover many times. And this is actually his very first poetry collection, as it says on that little blurb right there. And yeah, it's the only book of his that I know that has color illustrations. Usually he illustrated in black and white. Yeah, it's pretty darn cool. It's got some freaky looking animals and monsters and stuff and little poems that go with each of the illustrations. So yeah, it's nothing too amazing, but like I said, he's one of my favorite childhood authors, so I was glad to pick that one up finally. And then this last one is something that I think is also very special. It's something that I've needed to complete a very specific part of my Tolkien collection. This is the illustrated by the author edition of The Hobbit. This is part of a series that are put out by HarperCollins. They put out these very nice, high-quality paperbacks that include full-color illustrations by J.R.R. Tolkien. So, as you can see, like I said, it's pretty high quality. You got these nice end papers with some dwarven runes on the side. There is a book ribbon, and like the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, which I already had in my collection, they come with two little inserts, these little fold-out maps. The first one is Thorin's map of the Lonely Mountain, which is very cool. If you flip it on its back, it has the moon letters that are usually invisible, and then they're only revealed on certain nights where the moon can shine through the map. And then we have a map of the Wilderland. So mainly it's Mirkwood Forest and the Misty Mountains and such. Very cool. Yeah, I love these little fold-out maps. And like I said, it contains all of Tolkien's color illustrations that he did for The Hobbit. A lot of versions of The Hobbit have those illustrations, but they're usually in black and white. This one prints them in full color. So there's Beorn's Hall there. There's the Lord of the Eagles with the little sleepy Bilbo in the corner there. Oh, that's cool. I've never even seen this before. We have some little dwarves down there. I've never seen that illustration. That's really cool. I like that a lot. So yep, now I can fit in this copy of The Hobbit with the same editions of The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, and that minor portion of my Tolkien collection is now complete, and it looks very nice on my bookshelf. So that's all the books that I picked up over the past week or so. Let me know in the comments, as always, have you read any of these? What did you think of them? And until next time, as always, farewell and keep reading. Why, Spock, did you just make a joke? I don't know what you're talking about, Captain. Murder is a very grave subject.